Hello and welcome to another edition of the ROKER RAPPORT podcast. This week with me, Josh Wilkinson. And it's been an interesting week for Sunderland Football Club and we're going to get into all of it. But first, I'll introduce you to who I'm with this week. So we have Ant.
Hello.
First time debut for you, Ant. How are you feeling?
Oh, very, very excited.
Very excited. Good to hear. Anthony also, first time debut for you.
Yeah.
This Ant-Anthony thing might get confusing.
Should be fun. Call me whatever you need to, I'd say. as long as it's not derogative, everything's fine. I'm excited for the season also. 3 games in, 5 points.
Yeah.
Not be long until we're 100 points. We'll be fine.
Well, just the 95 to go. And then we're joined this week by special guest, Nick Barnes. How are you, Nick?
Good now.
Good now.
Much more relaxed.
Sure.
Enjoying the weekend.
Good stuff. Good stuff. So we'll just get into it then. I'm going to start with you, Nick, actually. It's probably quite a cliche, but a week is a long time in football, and I think the past week has shown that.
You're absolutely right. I'm no problem with cliches. I use them all the time.
Yeah.
They're there for a reason. You're absolutely right. I mean, if you go back to the beginning of last week, Accrington was coming up on the Tuesday night. There'd been the sort of the Ipswich game. Disappointment? Not sure. I mean, it was a point away from home at Portman Road in the wider context of. I look back to last season and think about the Luton game, and we went to Luton, and everyone sort of was a bit down after that, thinking they dropped 2 points against Luton. But actually, as the season panned out, that looked to be a good point. And I somehow look back at the Ipswich game, and for all the disappointment of the first half, and the fact that it actually could have been 3 or 4 down, they could have lost that game. Perhaps that point at Portman Road in the long run, it's going to be a good point if Ipswich are there or thereabouts. But the pressure then was undoubtedly heaping up on Jack Ross. He was under immense pressure going into the Accrington game to an extent because, in a way, that was a free hit. But you knew that if they went and got knocked out of the League Cup, it would still be, everyone would be down again. It'd be a defeat, and obviously the pressure then would have been massive on the Portsmouth game. Not that it wasn't; it was still big. But I thought the manner of the win over Accrington, I thought, well, that's lifted a little bit of the pressure because it was, they played well, they changed the system, they scored 3, probably could have scored 4 or 5. And then the Portsmouth game, well, look, you're going into that fearing the worst. They go 1 down. At that moment, I'm thinking, this is just so typically Sunderland. You could have written it. You could have written it that they were going to concede and go 1 behind, and I had this vision of the scenario, and they get back and it's 1-1 and everyone's down. But actually, credit to them, they dug in, got straight back in the game, lifted the mood. Maguire, had to be Maguire, didn't it? Scores, the second. And yeah, it was nervy the second half because you're always aware that Portsmouth could equalise, and unlike the playoff semi-final, they did actually have a go this time. But they saw it out, and I just thought, suddenly you could feel the pressure cooker, the lid was off it, and it's just, you feel now that you can go to Rochdale and breathe a little bit more easier again.
Yeah. So I'm just going to bring it back to the Accrington game, and I'll give this one to you, Ant. What did you make of the lineup? Because there was a lot of talk before of, do we rest our strong 11 and save it for the league because obviously we need points on the table quick, or do you stick with the same 11, try and build a bit of momentum? It was almost like he went with stick with a strong side.
Yeah, I was a little bit looking at the team sheet. I was like, who's playing where? Then you're looking, I was like, is Gooch going to play left back? And then it was McLaughlin, I think, was playing left back when we started off. I was just happy that we were going 4 at the back again. It's obviously 5, as much as Jack Ross has tried it out, it ain't working. So we went back to a natural 4, and I thought we just looked a lot more solid, a little bit more stronger, and it brought out the best in the strikers up front as well.
And speaking of the formation, actually, I know you interviewed Jack Ross after the Accrington game. I'm sure if many people have heard it. Just going over it again, did you sense some stubbornness almost in the kind of criticism of a back 5?
It's a good word. I mean, I think Jack can be stubborn. I think he does have that in his character. I think he's slightly stung by the reaction to the Oxford game, and I think that has coloured his reaction down the line. I mean, I think it's a situation where nobody likes to be criticised in any walk of life. Whatever you do, you don't like criticism. Jack's very methodical. He's very thorough. I mean, by his own admission, he's almost OCD, and I think he feels that or he felt that he put all that preparation into playing the three at the back, and his, he said that it's not dyed in the wool that this is the system we're going to play week in, week out. It's another option for us. But to me, I thought, well, if it's another option, why persevere with it all through pre-season and start the season with it and then go to Ipswich and start with it? And it's clearly not actually working very well. So I think, A, he was stung by that criticism. B, I think you're right. Stubbornness meant, look, he wasn't going to be swayed by everybody saying it didn't work against Oxford. He was going to stick to his guns and play it again. And unfortunately, I think that backfired on him, because at Ipswich, it went all so wrong that for all the detractors who have a tick list of saying he doesn't know what his first 11 is, he doesn't know what his formation is, he doesn't know this, doesn't know that, they could go down that list and tick them all at Ipswich and give Jack no room really to manoeuvre. So he backed himself into a corner for the Accrington game. Does he stick with the 3, or does he go to 4? And he went with the 4, although even before Ant said, you wonder about what they were going to play. And I looked at the team sheet, and we're all in the press box saying, you could play 3 out of that. Yeah. We still weren't convinced that it was going to be 4 until they kicked off. But I think because he then went 4, he'd obviously thought, yeah, look, it's not worked, so we're going that way. But he was then tetchy because he didn't like the sort of the nuance of that. I mean, it was a straight, like, he knew he was going to get asked. He knew I was going to, if it wasn't me, someone else was going to say, you went 4 at the back tonight. But he clearly didn't like it, because it was an admission of, not failure, but it was an admission that he got it wrong. And he's proud, he's, as I said, he's methodical, he's thorough. And I think that's where it touched a nerve. And he's avoided sort of, that issue of formations, and he got very prickly again on Thursday in the TV and newspaper press conference when he was, asked about formations.
I sometimes worry that, and I don't know what your thoughts on this are, Anth. I think sometimes Jack Ross struggles to really form a relationship with the fans, sometimes because of that stubbornness. I think sometimes if he came out and was like, listen, it worked for me at St Mirren to a good effect, which I can see that's why he's doing it. But if he was to come out and be like, look, it didn't work, we're going back to a back 4, and just that kind of hands up, I got it wrong, but I'm going to change it going forward.
Yeah, well, I think it's because, obviously the fans have a bigger voice these days. That's why we're all here, isn't it? He obviously gets to see what we all get to see as well on Twitter. He gets slated left, right and centre for doing nothing. I have a very unpopular opinion about the Oxford game, actually. I think we started off far too attacking. I think we were more of a 3-4-3 than 5 at the back. And we were so attacking that when, I think it was Dobson who made the error in the middle of the park, when they went forward, put the back of the net, and we panicked, and we just ended up with about 11 at the back, and we had absolutely nothing about it.
It's a good point, which Benner was on about yesterday. If you play 4-4-2, it leaves you much more open. But his argument is that's the risk you've got to take.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair enough, because I think League One is. I think this is another issue that Jack perhaps has still, in a way, got to get his head round. This is a League One. We're playing in League One, and this is a League One team, not the Championship, and you're trying to play Championship football in League One.
I completely agree.
And I think all credit to him for being brave against Portsmouth and going 4-4-2 or 4, 2. Was it 2 up front?
Yeah.
It did make it more open, and the risk, it proved it, because Portsmouth scored first, but they got back in the game, scored 2, and they could have scored a couple more. Portsmouth could have scored, but that's League One football. It's much more open, and we were having this debate in the week. If you're going to play League One football. And I'm watching the Accrington game, and we're so close to the pitch, you're sort of almost sitting on the touchline there. You realise, you just see how the speed of the game at this level, you don't get any time on the ball. Immediately you're on the ball, you've got 2 players around you, and someone's trying to win it back off you, and you lose it. But that's League One. You lose it, you win it back. You lose it, you win it back. But that's the ebb and flow of League One football. And I think that's something that Jack has struggled with. And perhaps, yesterday's game, the game against Portsmouth, maybe now, having addressed that, taken that risk, and it's worked, he'll feel a bit more relaxed about playing the system, using that 4, and playing it at Rochdale, playing it against AFC Wimbledon, and being a bit more sort of brave in that sense.
Do you think they're capable of playing out from the back with a ball at the feet?
I think they should be, because Willis is a ball player.
Yeah.
The players that sit in front of him are ball players.
Because I think at 0-0, we look very shaky with the ball at our feet. Passing the ball out to anybody looks
You see, I don't like the long ball out.
Well, none of us like the long ball either, do we? I mean,
I think you ultimately your mum's saying you've got to play it out from the back. And what I liked about Accrington was Power and Leadbitter. Now I would have quite liked to have seen Power and Dobson.
Yeah.
But I can understand why the Conservative in Jack, probably that would have been a bridge too far. That gambling on so many attacking.
This is what
players.
amazes me about Jack Ross, though, because he used to play quite attacking football, and he's come out and he said, my players are going to make mistakes, and that's fine, that's on me. And yet, like you say, he does have this very conservative side of him where he will play Leadbitter, whereas I think Dobson not starting was incredibly harsh, because other than, I know the Oxford game he put a pass wrong, but other than that, I think he's had a great start.
At this level. I mean, Maguire got 2 big passes wrong at Accrington.
Exactly.
But gamble, have a go. I mean,
Exactly.
You're right. I mean, Leadbitter's his safety valve, and I understand why he did it, because that's Jack, and that's how he sets his teams. I had a conversation the week with someone. We were talking about, the lead up to the Portsmouth game and the end of last season, because there's that hangover from last season, the draws, and that sort of, since the Checkatrade Trophy final and the Accrington game where they looked as though they were going to press on, then it all sort of went a bit pear-shaped. A theory sort of put forward to me, which actually I think to some extent holds some water, is the Coventry game, the 5-4 Coventry game. Jack looked at that and looked at not the fact they scored 4 goals, but the fact they conceded 5.
Yeah.
Now, the positive from that game was scoring 4 goals. And I'd think, right, at this level, you score 4 goals in a game, it's a one-off game. Take that forward into the games you're coming up to the end of the season. Go and score goals, go for attack, go and try and press and win games with, in that manner. But I think he went the other way, and this is the theory, was he went the other way. He got so worried about conceding goals that he sort of went ultra defensive.
Yeah,
I think and you think exactly. And how many goals did Sunderland score towards the end of the season?
Yeah, exactly.
And then they were that Fleetwood game, they were fantastic, and then the second half they were just a completely different team.
Sat back,
defend. And I think, to a certain extent, Jack mentally was coloured by that. And there was that hangover, not just for all of us with last season and the way it ended, but I think for Jack as well, in the back of his mind, it's played on him. So that's another reason, I think, for his sort of being stung by the criticism, in that he was, that has been part of it. But I think, that the win against Portsmouth, I think it will be a big win, because, I said to him afterwards that you've got to bear in mind that Sunderland and Portsmouth could well be top 2, top 3. And to beat one of your big rivals, that's a tick, that's a statement.
Yeah.
And they didn't play that well, but you think, well, they've done it, take that into the Rochdale game, they can only get better.
Yeah.
I think more confident to play in that.
I think if Portsmouth play that tomorrow, though, they'll be nowhere near the top 6. I think they really struggled at times to understand what was happening at times. They were passing the ball out of the back when it was 0-0, and they had all of the ball the first half, and you're looking at it going, they need to start attacking here. And they had a lucky break with Mark breaking through. A bit of pinball in the box, and
it was Power's mistake, wasn't it? And that set that up. And you're right, Marquis getting the touch to push it through to Harness.
Very fortunate.
But I like Harness. I mean, he was a handful. I mean,
their best player.
He's their new Jamal Lowe, isn't he? That's why they brought him in, and you can see that he'll cause problems.
Yeah, he's absolutely looks like a great player, actually.
But I mean, going into the game, they'd only conceded 1 goal, hadn't they, at Shrewsbury, and they've been scoring goals. Marquis will get them goals in the long run.
Yeah.
I think, like Sunderland to a certain extent, they're a work in progress, because Kenny's sort of... I mean, I spoke to the guy that covers them for the BBC down there. He said, yeah, look, they've been experimenting a little bit with systems.
Right.
So Kenny's been doing the same, but I don't think he certainly didn't come under the same amount of criticism that Jack did after the defeat at Shrewsbury, which is interesting. I thought, the Portsmouth fans almost resigned themselves. There wasn't the same reaction from what I can gather to the reaction there was here to the draw. And that is a distinct hangover from...
We've been at as fans, we've all been in a high emotional state because of the back end of last season, where the Charlton game was devastating. And then we're getting beat off Portsmouth in the trophy final. I think coming into this season, Jack Ross needed an all guns blazing sort of start to get the fans back on side.
I think pre-season as well was a damp squib. I mean, I look back to last year when they played, was it 6 games, and we were going to St Mirren and Hartlepool or wherever it was, and every game that they played, there was always a great support, and there was the games were here. And every game that was played in pre-season, there was a development. You saw the team getting better, but we didn't have that. You know, Heerenveen, it was like, ugh.
Yeah.
It's like we're turning up for a
And I
game.
thought, well, this is the game before the week before. I mean, funny enough, I was chatting to Rob Mason, you know, the club historian, before that game. I said, the mood seems to be so flat. And he went, oh no, I think it's really exciting. I thought, well, it's not. You know, let's be honest, it's not. It's flat. This isn't the game I want to see before the start of the season.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I wanted the stadium to be bouncing. I'd have liked to seen. Well, I had a conversation about this actually before the Portsmouth game. I'd like to have seen a Leeds or a Championship club who've got a good support at the Stadium of Light, because I think that would have got everybody up, and I thought it would have been a better game. I think, you know, Sunderland would have been better off playing teams from the Championship or of a similar ilk than the pre-season they had, because it was nothing. It didn't to me prove anything. It just left them. It seemed to me they're in no man's land and trying to play this new system. It was just everything was just floating about to me with no real sort of purpose and aim.
Yeah. Although what you don't want is another Celtic.
No, you don't. But I think you know, in that
thing.
that whole Celtic Championship season, that was on the cards because the club was in such disarray.
Yeah,
and it was such a mess.
So we'll go into the Pompey game a little bit more. I'm going to use the 3-word review. So every week we do put out a 3-word review and we get responses on our Twitter. So I'll just go through a few. So Graham, ROKER Rapport's own, Ozturk's back pocket. He was, you know, referencing John Marquise, however you pronounce it. Turned a corner from Jack Ford, played down Pompey, John Ridley, Robert Armstrong, Wyke up top, Michael Robinson, Wizard of Oz, obviously another Ozturk fan, another Sir Alam Ozturk. So a lot of Ozturk fans, not a lot of Willis in there, which was surprising because for me he was our best player on the day. But I'm going to bring this one to you. Have we found our new centre-back partnership for the foreseeable?
I think as long as they stay fit, 100%, they're going to be the two at the back. What I like about the pair of them, the kind of different players. You've got Willis, who is a ball player, you know, can break out from the back. I know he hasn't shown it as much this season, but he's a ball player. He looks a special player. And then you've got Ozturk behind him, who's just a defender. And that's all I want in my defenders in League One, to defend. You know, and I am actually a massive fan of Ozturk, considering where he was last season. He was out on his ear, you know, quite harshly in my opinion. He made, you know, one mistake against Sheffield Wednesday, looked a little bit dodgy against Charlton, but the whole team did, bar the second half. And Ozturk, back end of last season's come in, done brilliantly. Again, start of this season, barely played pre-season, didn't get any games against Oxford, and then they brought him in against Accrington. And I thought he was excellent then, and I thought he was excellent yesterday.
Do you think it was strange he didn't start the season?
Yeah, very much so. I think maybe he's not comfortable playing as a 3. But I wouldn't have Flanagan anywhere near my team at the minute, considering his form the back end of last season has continued into this season. So my two will be Willis and Ozturk for the foreseeable.
So obviously, if we're playing a back four, obviously you need a substitute on the bench, and that was Flanagan yesterday.
Yeah.
Would you look at bringing in Baldwin back from the Maya or wherever he is?
Exactly. Jack Butler is an extraordinary.
Yeah.
I mean, that is. You go back to last season and Baldwin fell off the cliff, and we've just not seen him since.
He's just
now, is it mental? Is it you know, is that the problem? Is that the issue? Confidence is Jack just not seeing anything in training that's giving him any confidence? But he's not even really making the bench. I mean, what's he been made the bench once, twice this season?
He was on the bench at Accrington, I think, wasn't he?
But other than that, and you know, you think, what's happened? Flanagan, you know, likewise, Jack did admit in the week, he's like Hume, not had the greatest starts to the season. I mean, I was pleased that Hume came on against Portsmouth. I thought, good, that's good. I think actually good management. Get him on for 10 minutes, whatever. So he feels he's back in and getting game time again, and his confidence will come back. Because he's not a bad defender. I just don't think he started as well as he had last year when he came in. I mean, that injury at Coventry did derail him, didn't it? I mean, because he, you know, didn't really hit the ground running again when he came back in, but that's probably understandable having been out for so long. So I thought it was great to get him reintroduced. But I echo everything about Ozturk. You know, that man is
he's a new cult hero.
He is, isn't he? He's the new Aaron Nosworthy, you know, in a way. I mean, but you know, I admired him for what he, you know, his character last season, because he came back in at Wimbledon, didn't he? And the second half there, and he did okay, he played well, and then again disappeared. But when he did come back in, there was no sort of he didn't make any sort of derogatory noises about being kept out. He was full of praise for the way the club was being run, the way he'd been handled, and he was looking forward to playing. He would give all he had to make sure he stayed in the. I just think him and Willis together look solid.
Yeah.
And they look that. I mean, I'm coming back. Said it earlier. It's League One.
Yeah.
And it's what you do at League One. And he looks as though he's a natural for playing in that four.
I'm a large purveyor of if you're going to back four, you must keep the same back four if they're all fit, because you can only grow together as a back four if you're playing together.
Well, I think John McLaughlin has already said this season what he wants to see in front of him is the same players, consistency, and if they can keep that going. I think that's
tinkering
one
with the
thing
defence is never stable for any club.
It's not.
Speaking of which, though, obviously we had McLaughlin start at left back, and he's a right back.
Yeah.
Does that speak volumes that Denver Hume didn't start?
I think it was probably a confidence thing with Jack Ross. Play someone who knows how to play first team football, get him in there, give him a good whack, and then play Denver for the last 10, like Nick says. Give Denver a crack for the last 10, 20 minutes and build his confidence a bit more, because the first two games of the season, Denver didn't have the best of starts. Against Oxford, he looked. It was dynamite up and down the wing. He kept the ball well, but he just could not find that touch in the final third, which would create any sort of chance. He was lumping things to Rosehead, but I think there's a player in there, and I think if Jack Ross is capable of managing his confidence and give him the belief back, he'll be back in the squad and he'll be able to.
Well, it's interesting because Jack has said in the summer Denver would be his first choice left back this season. That's the plan.
It's a lot of pressure for a young lad, that though, isn't it?
There's a lot of pressure.
Do you think that's still the plan?
Well, I wonder now, because they're obviously trying to get a left back in.
Yeah.
And if they get a left back in who's experienced, then you'd think that they would probably take the shirt. And Hume's there as the backup.
Yeah, it's quite the U-turn though. If you've already told the lad you're going to
play
first
it is,
team
and
football.
I think we'll be coloured now by what's happened in the opening couple of games of the season, which is not Hume's fault that the system changed and he had to adapt to play in that system. And he wasn't the only one who struggled to adapt to that, because McLaughlin had a terrible game at Ipswich. There was an argument that both of them could have been,
just not play with a left back.
Not play with left back, but he had to, and he's in that situation where that's all he's got. But I think as you mentioned, McLaughlin's right-sided, so he's not going to be. That's not going to be the position that he fills this season. I think then begs the question: if McLaughlin goes back to right back, where does O'Nien go? And where does is O'Nien going to find it hard then to get into the midfield, because Maguire, McGeady, Gooch, Power, Ledbetter, Georg, I mean the list goes on and on. Is he going to force his way into the starting lineup further up the field? It's going to be interesting. I mean, injuries will play their part. I mean, we've already seen straight away McGeoch's picked up a ankle knock, and
McNulty as well.
He was on the bench. Yeah. And McNulty now, he's going to be out, hamstring week 2, 3?
Yeah.
We don't know yet.
It
depends on the severity of the hamstring. But immediately we're 4 games into the season, and the knocks are starting to come.
So speaking of McNulty's injury, Wyke a definite starter on Tuesday night?
Absolutely. Wyke, when he came on after 55 minutes, he was just different class. He came on. He was the only player on the Sunderland team who I've seen who wanted to get hurt. It was just stick his head in. He didn't care. He was going to win that ball regardless. And if he didn't win the ball, he was chasing after it and winning it. Then he was going for the seconds. He knew exactly what he was doing, and hopefully he can kick on from there and carry on.
Both him and Burgess were together at Middlesbrough, weren't they? They know each other really well. They know each other. They're in each other's pocket. They're very, very close. In that sense, they know each other very well.
Right.
So I think there was an element of that in there as well.
Yeah,
I think
it was all over him, wasn't he?
I noticed last season they had a bit of words, shall we say, on the pitch. Yeah. Interesting. Well, speaking of that, we'll go back to the 3-word review, because it's a conversation we've spoke about before. Obviously, we've mentioned Jack Ross in the system he's played and stuff like that. But I wanted to have a bit more of a deep dive into Ross in general, because obviously I think a lot of the conversation possibly a week ago, I think a lot of people were leaning towards Jack Ross out, whether that was right or not. But having looked at this 3-word review from yesterday's result, we've got a couple of trusted Ross, Jack Ross in, etc. So I think that shows, the fickleness,
Yeah, absolutely.
or they were already kind of sticking with Ross anyway, but now they feel confident enough to say so. So I'll take this one to you, and what was your opinion a week ago, and has it changed?
No, I'm a full believer. Even if they were going to get rid of him, they should have got rid of him at the end of the playoff final. Could have been a clean slate there. New manager in pre-season, let him get his players in. Now we've started the season off. You can't just say after 2 draws, Jack Ross out. You can't do it. I can understand why the fans are a little bit upset with him, because he seems a little bit kind of stuck in his ways a little bit, and because we drew 1-1 and 1-1 first 2 games of the season. Had it been 3-3 or 4-4, I think it might have been a little bit different. It's because it was just so much a little bit like last season. But for me, you've got to give a lot. If the chairman and the owners have said, right, Jack Ross is our man. He said it countless times. Jack Ross is our man. We have got to give him at least till Christmas to, try and turn it around. And to be fair to him, yesterday, it's like Nick's touched on it. He made some changes yesterday. He changed to a flat back 4. He brought Grant back in, a little bit of a comfort zone kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it worked, and we beat Portsmouth, who were going to be up there 2-1. It's fair enough, in my opinion.
And you, Anth?
I never wanted him out in the first place. I think the lad obviously has talent and a managerial capacity, as he's shown in St Mirren. What were a very small club in Scotland, built them up to the Premier League. And I think now, as Sunderland manager, we need to give him time. We can't just keep blaming the manager and keep turfing managers out and making all these wholesale changes, because there's no stability. We can't build any foundations.
Thing is, as well, say if tomorrow we pull the plug and it's not going to happen, but say if they said, right, Jack Ross has resigned or Jack Ross has been sacked, who are we going to get in? Who's going to come in at the minute, or who was a better calibre than Jack Ross at the minute?
Well, that's it. There's loads of shouts for Paul Heckingbottom at the beginning of the season, but he's at Hibs now, isn't he? I think if we overhaul the management system again, then the academy essentially gets an overhaul, because the new manager wants his new system in, and then you get the new formations again, and everything starts going tits up. Again, like we've had 10 different managers in 10 seasons. We're absolutely.
Yeah,
it's not the best record of management, are we?
How long have we got? I mean, there's a lot been written and said in the last 2 or 3 weeks about Jack Ross, and you're right. There is an element who don't want him and don't like him. My argument has always been: you look back to last season. Was it failure? I don't know. The club was in turmoil. They missed out on promotion by 6 points. Yes, too many draws. Yes, not enough clean sheets. And, you can, as we've talked about already, you can argue that sometimes Jack Ross is a bit too conservative, a bit too safe. Well, if that was safe last season and they got the number of points that they did and they only just missed out and they went to 2 Wembley finals, well and good. I think what he's proved this week is he has been able to face that challenge of going against the vein of his own character and gambling a bit, and admitting that perhaps, whilst not publicly, but by what he's done in demonstrating, he's gone to 4 at the back again and gone to a much more orthodox sort of setup, that he can change, and they've won, and they haven't lost this season. And I just think, why change the manager you believed in last summer, who ticked all the boxes, and you said at the time, his CV was outstanding. Through the season, losing Madger in January, then not being able to get an adequate replacement. Well, that wasn't necessarily Jack Ross's fault. The Madger scenario was a circus in a way, and that derailed the second half of the season, if you like. But now, we're only a few games in. If you believe the manager in the second season is going to take the club on and forwards and the team on and forwards, then you've got a great foundation last season to build on. You've got McNulty in now, and unfortunately he's injured, but he looks lively and sharp. Willis has come in with, looks, a good sort of double act with odds to it. Dobson's come in and looks a very, very good midfielder. The players he's brought in, McLaughlin, a bit of a question mark over, but then it's not his fault. He's chopped and changed him. There looks like a team that's only going to get better. If McGeady's kept fit, Maguire's kept fit and consistent, White now looking, like he's the player they thought they bought last summer. Well, why chop and change? Why, go through that whole process again, and new manager comes in and changes all the backroom staff, changes the system, the players and so on. There's not a lot wrong. And I think that was proved against Portsmouth. They're back on track, 5 points out of 9, 43 games left. Plenty of time to sort of build on that.
Yeah.
We touched on Big John McLaughlin as well earlier. I think yesterday he was back to his best. He's had a bit of a shaky start to the season, but yesterday he came for everything. He caught everything.
Even Ledbitter's back header of the
great save. What a save that was!
How that could have been a game changer, So McLaughlin, exudes the confidence for the back four to build off, and then the midfielders build off that.
I always thought Jack Ross was harshly criticised that season, because I almost, I think it should have been a free hit in a lot of ways, because like you say, the club was in turmoil. Last summer transfer wise was just an anomaly. It was just a case of get whoever we can. I mean, ironically, Ozturk was the first signing, and I think there were question marks for a while, but now he's, like you say, he's one of our best players now.
But see, this transfer business, I don't know if people quite understand how it works, because Jack's not in charge of transfers.
No.
He basically says, I want a player of this ilk.
Sends it to the team.
And Richard Hill and Tony Coton then go and find players of that ilk. So it's not like old-fashioned that it used to be. The manager's on the phone to whoever, I like him. Can he come in? It's not. It doesn't work like that. And I think there's a flaw in that system, because I think it's taken control away from the manager. And I would have liked to seen, Jack says himself, he would like to have had a budget. If he's got a budget, he knows exactly. If he's got a budget, he says, I can spend. If I say to X striker, I'll give you £400 a week, I know then I've got only £100 a week left for my left back or whatever. But I can work in that system. But at the minute, he hasn't got control of the budget, hasn't got control of who's coming in, who's going out, and that actually I think, is a flaw, and that doesn't help the manager.
Is he not in the discussion for recruitment?
He must be in the discussion as to who they'd like to get. But I think once that's taken out of his hands, to me, I think it's not ideal. I'd rather see the manager be in control of that budget and control of who comes in, goes out, much more hands-on than it is it's interesting about, the flack that Jack gets. One of the criticisms that's been levelled at him was that he stands on the touchline with his hands in his pockets and he's not very demonstrative. Yeah. Well, I watched Kenny Jackett yesterday.
Exactly.
Kenny Jackett does exactly the same. Stands there with his arms folded, hands in his pockets. Probably says less. So why? So that criticism is just fatuous, as far as I'm concerned. It's got no bearing on, as Jack says, it's pointless ranting and raving. They can't hear you anyway.
Yeah.
It's all for the crowd. And there are certain managers, Carl Robinson's one, that does it because he knows it'll get the crowd. Paul Lambert does it because he knows he'll get the crowd on his side for doing it. But actually, there's no justifiable reason for it. Players can't hear him. Once they're out on the pitch, it's down to the captain and whoever's on the pitch to start making the noise. And
honestly, I never noticed what he does because I'm watching the players.
Yeah, exactly.
I just don't know why it's a point.
It's the telly, isn't it? It's TV.
Yeah,
it's becoming. That's one of the reasons why he can't manage the club. That's another. I think, come on.
Yeah.
What we need is Jurgen Klopp. Let's get him in.
But I think a lot of it is perspective, though, isn't it? I mean, and the fine margins in football as well. Because, like you say, if we win the Checker Trade final, if we win the player final, Jack Ross is a hero. He's an absolute legend of the club. And obviously, yes, both games we lost. But even at the start of this season, I think we were talking about it earlier. If we were to have beaten Oxford, drew with Ipswich, drew with Pompey, you're kind of thinking, that's all right, actually. We beat who we expected to, and we took points off two teams that are going to be up there at the end of the season.
But another interesting, another interesting one is the Checker Trade Trophy final. If Sunderland had won the Checker Trade Trophy final and not gone up, what do you think the reaction would have been? Pretty much
Still would have been,
Portsmouth won it and didn't go up, and here we are, Sunderland, Portsmouth playing each other in the same division. Yeah. Actually, looking back, I quite like to have won it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you're at Wembley, you want to win there.
Yeah.
I kind of want to win it regardless of whether they went up or not.
Yeah.
In isolation, I wanted to go to Wembley and win.
Let's have a cup. Let's have a trophy.
That's the thing. Should we focus on it again this season, or is it just promotion? Because we only just missed out.
I think we've got the fringe players to get us up there anyway, get us towards the final. Regardless, the fringe players will be desperate to prove to Jack Ross that they need to play first team football. You put them in a Checker Trade Trophy game, slap them in against Newcastle's under-23s, hammer them 6-0 or whatever.
Well, this is the thing. I mean,
it's a good point because this year he could play. I mean, going back to that Accrington game, and he made 6 changes. He could have made 11,
Yeah.
and still rested his first team. And I'm thinking, there's nothing to stop them now. And the way the rules are, he could do it. I mean, because he made 11 changes at Morecambe in the group stages last year. You could field the second team, if you like, and give all those players a run out without having any impact on the first team. And then, last season he did go with his strongest 11 at Bristol Rovers, which was understandable last season. Well, this season, if you get that far, we'll still keep the second team. Ultimately, nobody's going to lose any sleep if they don't get to Wembley this year, because promotion is the be all and end all now. Mm-hmm. But at least if you're in the competition and you're making progress in it, it's like going to Burnley on Wednesday week. Yeah, you make changes. You're not thinking you're going to beat Burnley. They'll make loads of changes. But if you go through, all well and good.
Yeah.
Address the next game when you come to it.
Isn't it? It's going to be a lovely night out.
That's the thing with Burnley, though, because you can be confident they're going to make a lot of changes. Do you not go for it and think, let's take a scalp and then build on that momentum?
I think it's a bit, a little bit naive to think that it's possible to beat a side like Burnley when we've dropped off so much in the last 3-4 years. I think, just personally myself, watched us play Oxford, and then I watched a championship game. I think it was West Brom, Nottingham Forest, and I thought we are so far away from this at the minute that if we got promoted last season, we would not have enjoyed this season at all.
That's another conversation entirely, isn't it? Because I'll be honest, I thought Charlton would have struggled.
Yeah,
and yet they're doing very well.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, fair enough.
It's a funny one, but
when you're right, you're right.
I mean, because I still see people talking about us like getting back to the Premier League and stuff, which is obviously the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
But then I just think, well, we're not even in the Championship.
Yeah.
It's a long way away, I think.
And the gap between League One and Championship is massive, and it's only growing further and further.
Do you think Newcastle are enjoying the Premiership at the minute? I can't.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
not. Imagine we'd enjoy being up there either.
And I think Tyne-Wear Derby in the Championship is possible.
Sounds
next
beautiful
season.
to me.
Very
sounds
possible.
Absolutely beautiful.
Which is going to be interesting in itself.
We've got 5 points more than this season as well. We're flying.
Well, that's true. That's true.
I'm quite happy just not to have VAR in League. I'm happy not being in the Premier League.
I love VAR, mate. I think VAR's the greatest invention in the world. I'll have nothing said bad about it. I love it. It's great. It's full TV, isn't it? Oh, it's terrific. Armchair stuff.
So we still got a couple of weeks, roughly, of the transfer window. I'm interested to know what you fellas think in terms of which positions we need to improve. I mean, obviously left back's in it is the obvious one. But do we need any strength anywhere else in the team? And if so, is there anyone you've got your eye on or anything like that?
Left back isn't a must. I still think there's a little bit at the back of my mind that they need someone else up front.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
with the McNulty.
With the McNulty situation, Griggs clearly at the moment it's just not happening for him. Wyke, okay, but always the fear with Wyke he's going to pick up an injury, and I think that's odds on he probably will. So I think it would be quite nice to have someone else in there. I know Watmore's to come back, but then Watmore's not an out and out goal scorer. He's not a striker, and he again I think is proving injury prone, and I think the chances are of him having a run of games is probably 50-50. So I wouldn't mind seeing. I think midfield it's so full that I don't think that's an issue. But
do we need another centre back?
I'm interested in this Flanagan-Baldwin thing. I mean, the Burnley game, we were just talking about that. I'd like to see one of them or both of them play in that game, because I think, if Baldwin's got an issue with confidence or there's something not quite right, he needs to play. If Flanagan, it didn't in the end go well for him, but to start with, he was okay. I think he needs games. I would play them against Burnley, not risk Willis and Ozturk, keep them fit, keep them fresh, and give players like that an opportunity to to try and get game time and in a proper game, not a under 23s or a behind closed doors game, just to give them, try and get some confidence back into them.
Because with Baldwin, he was Peterborough captain.
He was. I'm amazed at Baldwin because, he had everything, all the attributes to really, step up a level, and he just hit the buffers, didn't he? It just hit the wall.
It just changed. And it looked like an overnight change as well, didn't it? Like from one game, I thought he was championship level when we signed.
Yeah,
he's a fantastic player. Went down to Gillingham, I think, away, and he just looked a cut above. And then I really don't know what's gone on. It's either something with him or something that he's been managed wrong, possibly. But
But I think, I mean, in terms of managed, I mean, he said when he was taken out at Christmas that Jack put an arm around him, had a long conversation with him, and Jack Baldwin had no problem with it. He said, I understood exactly all the reasons, and it was the right thing to do, and I have nothing, no complaints about that. But then he's taken out again, and he's just disappeared.
Yeah, he has gone off officially.
I will ask Jack about it probably tomorrow, ahead of the Rochdale game. Where's Jack Baldwin?
Did he play a lot in pre-season? I must admit, I didn't particularly follow pre-season.
Because the three was Flanagan, McLaughlin, and Willis.
Yeah. Which is interesting because you think, well, pre-season everyone gets a chance.
Yeah.
And especially when you're building on... That's why I thought it was interesting. Ozturk didn't play a lot either, because the idea of, we were going with this back at the 3, let's give Ozturk and Baldwin some games in this 3 to get used to it. But it was... he seemed to make the decision, and I suppose I'm going back to the stubbornness almost of, this is my 3. This is what we're going to play every game.
But it's interesting because Embleton's another one. Fair enough, he had a good pre-season, but then he elects to play him against Oxford, and he did all right. I mean, but he didn't pull up trees, and there'd be reasons for that. But now, what's Embleton's future now this season? He'll be frustrated if he's not playing games, because the reason he signed a new contract, and he thinks he's now pushed into the first team squad, and he's playing with the first team. But if he's not going to get opportunities, will he be knocking on the door saying, actually, I'll be better off if I'm sent out on loan somewhere for 6 months to play?
I think it's similar for Mickey Yock as well. I worry that he's probably lost his spot now, because last season he was playing quite well, and then he lost his spot, and then just wasn't brought back in. I'm almost looking at yesterday's game as, is he just going to stick with Power and Ledbetter now?
I think when you win, you've got to stick to same 11. I'm a huge purveyor of that.
So you're going same 11 against Rochdale?
Just stick with it, apart from McNulty, obviously, with the injuries.
Yeah.
But I've got to stick Wyke up there. But I think you need to build momentum, and you've got the same 11 in. They've won a game. Keep going, win again, keep going, and just hope they keep.
I agree. You've got to build. You've got to build confidence in that team, consistency, confidence, and keep doing the same things. And it's like that. What's the old mantra? If you keep doing it, in the end it becomes second intuitive for them.
Yeah.
And that's what this team's got to be now this season, is intuitive. They've got to. I think that's the disappointment. I think for a lot of people is they didn't in League One. What you're going to do is you want to be a Luton or a Barnsley, who I actually take my hat off to both of them last season, because I thought when they lost the manager, that would be But then you thought, well, actually they don't have to change anything. Mick doesn't have to do anything.
Yeah.
The template's there. They just do what they do. And it's exactly what Luton did to the end of the season, just do what they do. And Barnesy, I thought, well, I wonder what happened with Kiefer Moore getting injured. But no, didn't change a thing. No. They just steamroll it. You always knew that every time you looked at Barnesy's result, you knew they were going to win 2-0, 3-0, 2-1, 3-1.
Even this season in the Championship, they lose their two centre-halves. I mean, they're quite well known to be good, recruiters anyway. But they bring in 2 brand new centre-halves, and it's like... The other one's never left.
And that's what I want to see for Sunderland this season now. I want to see them take this 11, beat Portsmouth 2-1, go to Rochdale, win 2-3.
Bit of consistency.
Yeah, AFC Wimbledon at home, beat them 2 or 3. Just start making a statement that we are a League One team that knows how to play in this level, and they'll go up.
So I want to touch on the league in a wider general. I think, obviously, we're only 3 games in, you can't read too much into it. But I think there's been some interesting results, and I think some teams are perhaps doing better than some thought, and some teams are certainly doing a lot worse than some thought. Are there other teams that we should be looking at as our competitors?
Simon Grayson's Blackpool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think it's straight away. I'm thinking Paul Tisdale will do a job at MK Dons.
Yeah.
The Cowleys will do a job at Lincoln. Simon will do a job at Blackpool.
Yeah.
Carl Robinson will do something at Oxford, because that's Carl Robinson.
Yeah.
Mark Robbins will do something at Coventry.
I mean, look at Oxford. They're so much better than they were the back end of last season.
It's whether they've got the consistency over the season to do it, and the problems they've got ongoing off the field might actually impact them. And that might be the same, could be said of Coventry. But, we have this debate about whether this season it would be as strong as last season with all those teams at the top, Doncaster, Peterborough, Barnsley, Luton, Sunderland, Portsmouth. I think it will be as strong at the top this time around, because I think those, those teams I've just mentioned, they'll be the teams that replace. Doncaster will still do a good job. Peterborough will still be
It just doesn't look as strong on paper.
It doesn't look as strong on paper. But that's our. I think it doesn't look as strong on paper because we're looking at the clubs and who they are, rather than the clubs and who they've got managing them.
Well, I think a lot of Sunderland fans, as you kind of mentioned there, look at Blackpool with Simon Grayson and think, no chance. But I think a lot of Sunderland fans forget he is a very good manager.
He's a very good League One
and
manager.
And they're on a high. Well. The fans are on a high.
New owners.
The club's on a high. He's got something to prove.
Yeah.
The mix is absolutely...
It just makes sense.
I mean, if you didn't feel sorry for Blackpool before, you'll be overjoyed for them with the turnaround that's happened anyway, even with Simon Grayson in charge.
Yeah.
As furious as that might make it as a Sunderland fan.
I must admit, I don't really hold any ill will against Simon Grayson. I just thought he was out of his depth.
In the wrong place. Yeah,
absolutely. I think he would have been a great manager.
I still feel sorry for the way to get the sack after a 3-3 draw with Bolton at home. I mean, it was slightly sort of, and bearing in mind, we've all watched Netflix and we've all seen it all how that season unravelled behind the scenes. You've got to feel sorry for him because he was always caught in the middle of it.
Yeah, well, I think with Lincoln on a never-ending bounce upwards.
Well, the Cowleys, I think that it's the Luton phenomenon.
Yeah.
They're on a roll. They're good. They are good coaches.
Do you think they'll fall away?
I'm not sure.
It's momentum, isn't it? If you can carry on the momentum.
If you're winning games,
you've scored 8. They've conceded none.
It's an impressive start.
Just not scared.
It's an impressive start, and they clearly are a fit for that club. I mean, it's interesting. At what point do they say we want a bigger club or we want to move on? I don't know. I mean, Paul Tisdale was one that, I know him well at Exeter. He had 10 years there, and he was, there were overtures made from the Premier League, but he was happy at Exeter. And are the Cowleys the same? Do they?
Well, they have come out and they've already came out and said that they're very happy at Lincoln.
Yeah, I wonder if they are of that Tisdale ilk. They'll be.
They're very. I find they're very clever with what they say, though. I think before the season they were like, "Oh no, promotion is not an option here."
Well, they're bright.
But I think deep down they know what it is.
But they are incredible. They're linked with absolutely everything now.
Yeah.
As soon as someone gets the sack, the Cowley brothers are top of that list, aren't they?
Yeah.
I'll throw a name out there for the Cowleys, and everyone's saying like, "Oh, they should go here, they should go there." Eddie Howe at Bournemouth.
Yeah,
Eddie Howe
just take the words out
went
of my
to Burnley, didn't he? And then it never worked. He went back to Bournemouth. Look where Bournemouth are now.
Yeah, you see, I think the Cowleys not unlike Eddie Howe.
Yeah.
He's ingrained at Bournemouth. He knows everything from the caretaker's cupboard through to the manager's office because he came through the youth system. He ran the development squads. He's taken them from the bottom of the Football League to the Premier League. It's Eddie Howe, AFC. And I think the Cowleys aren't unlike that.
They can ask for whatever they want as well from Lincoln. For what they've done. They can say, right, we want this, that and the other, and Lincoln will have to find a way to give them it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a nice setup there.
Yeah.
It's a nice stadium. It's got plenty of room for expansion. It's got, they've got, in a sense, if you're the Cowleys and you've looked at what Eddie Howe has done, and you could sit back and say, look, we could achieve this. We can do that. I mean, the only thing is Lincoln's, what's their supporter base is probably not vast because they're in a bit of the hinterland, really. I mean, it's what's their catchment area? It's, they've started to impinge on Hull but there's not really vast support there for them in the long run. But that might be nor is Bournemouth, so maybe that's the model for them.
Do you think we have to start looking at some games a bit differently? Do you think we have to look at, because I mean, a lot of people had Peterborough up there at the start of the season. They're in 20th with a single point. Do we have to start looking at the Blackpool games and the Lincoln games as our competitors, as our big games?
Absolutely.
Not having this kind of, it's just Blackpool, it's just Lincoln.
But I think, no, you're right, because I think going to Rochdale on Tuesday, another one, don't just say, it's Rochdale. Look what happened at Rochdale last season. They just about got away with it.
Yeah.
Because those teams, this is, again, Rochdale's big night. They're going to love Sunderland coming into town.
There's Wimbledon on Saturday as well.
They love it.
Such a run of form at the back end of last season. They should have been relegated, but they managed to battle the way up, and now they're on a bit of run of form in the league, and we can't take anybody lightly anymore.
No.
I mean, you look at Oxford. I was one of them. I was one who went in naively thinking, we're going to pace them absolutely, and then you realise it's a game of football, and it's 11 on 11, and it's
it is, and as well. But I think a lot of these clubs, they're fighters.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we mentioned it on the podcast we did after the Oxford game. They came there for a bit of a fight.
Yeah,
they came there to kind of get in our faces and mess it up. And
You'll
my
have Maguire
biggest
And
worry,
Wigan will do that this season, and Wimbledon will probably do it on Saturday.
all of them. And I don't think we've really learned from that. I
I
think
think Sunderland this season they've got to have an extra 10% mentally this season,
and just be a bit nastier.
and be a bit nasty, a bit more.
Stick your elbows
savvy.
out.
You learn. They've got to look back at last season and learn from those games, and got to think, right, when we go to Rochdale, stamp authority on the game. And with that little, it's, we talked earlier about, it said fine margins, and it is fine margins, but that fine margin is having that 10% extra now this season to take it that next step up. And that could be, that 10% extra could be your 6 points that you didn't go up with last season.
Yeah. 3 wins as opposed to 3 draws. Yeah. So we'll start to finish up now. We'll talk about the Rochdale game on Tuesday. I want from everyone prediction of side. You don't have to give me the whole 11, but kind of formation, any changes from the last game, and a score prediction as well.
Okay. Well, I'll probably stick with Wyke instead of McNulty. Obviously, that's the one change I would make. And as we've pointed out, you can't change a winning team, so I would stick with that 11. Hopefully it's a win, 'cause I'm going. So I'm going to set, but as Nick's pointing out, it's going to be a difficult game. And they've got a striker in Henderson, who's an excellent League One striker. So we've got to be on our best performance, really. But I think it'll be 3-1 Sunderland.
I'd stick with the same 11. Obviously, we can't play McNulty with his hamstring injury, so Hoy Wyke in there instead. We'll take Willis and Ozturk at the back, and I think they'll just roll on from what they've done yesterday. I think we'll keep a clean sheet and we'll win 2-0. That's what I'm taking.
First clean sheet of the season.
That's what I'm taking.
So Jack Ross is after, isn't it?
I hope so. That's nothing I want more than a clean sheet. I mean, being a goalkeeper myself, I just love a good clean sheet. It's like scoring a hat-trick.
Yeah, I'm a striker, so I just want to score more goals and concede. I'm in the other way.
I want to win every game 4-3.
Yeah, I'm kind of like that. That's what we were doing kind of the first half of last season.
I'm more than okay with that.
3-1, 3-2.
Fun to watch.
We were scoring more goals, and that's why I thought we kind of let off last season, hunting for this clean sheet.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you score more goals than somebody else.
Entertainers.
Yeah.
I echo everything you just said.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm in agreement with all that.
Perfect.
2-0 and one change.
Yeah.
That'll do.
Yeah.
See, I would put Dobson back in, personally.
I would, but I don't think he's going to change. With this, don't change a winning team.
No.
I feel sorry for Dobson because I think I would, as I said before, I'd like to have seen Power and Dobson as that. But it's too
If things aren't
for Jack, I think.
If things aren't working out,
gamble.
Bring him on.
Well, I think that's another thing. He may well prove to be a very, very good impact sub. And I think that's another thing probably worth mentioning from the weekend is the bench now looks like you can arguably have, you've got game changers on the bench.
Yeah.
I think we can have to. At some point, we'll have to address that McGeady and Maguire are not going to play 46 games this season because it's just not in their DNA to do it. So there's at some point they've got to be changed. But when you've got players like Dobson, Embleton, etc., whoever it might be, I think you've got the wherewithal to be more flexible and change it.
Yeah.
Take a little bit going back to the when we're on about the transfers, and I would like to say sign maybe a young, quick winger from a Premier League or a Championship club.
A little loan.
Yeah, nice little loan. You can stick him on the bench, and when either Maguire or McGeady's got a little.
I'd
bit
have
of an
liked.
injury,
Did Bakari go anywhere from Coventry last season?
I'm sure he went to Wigan. I think he went to Wigan on loan.
He's in the Championship. Yeah,
Quick,
and I've also liked Woodburn from Liverpool.
That was an excellent
thought he
signing.
was brilliant against us.
Chris Coleman tried to get him, didn't he?
Yeah.
But I mean, going back to the consistency factor as well is another issue. I think is if you are winning games and you're getting the momentum going, changes you make to the team don't make a huge amount of difference. And you mentioned Barnsley and then changing the two centre backs and they just carried on.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you've got a winning team.
Yeah.
You can change players and they will slot in and carry on.
Yeah.
And that disruption's not palpable. But if you're constantly changing it, then it has an impact. It does.
It can only be detrimental.
Yeah, it can
really
only be detrimental.
Well, we'll find out on Tuesday.